Earth stayed quiet, until the Galactic Council insults went too far. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the dark control room, her eyes fixed on the massive screens that covered every wall. Numbers and symbols flowed across the displays like digital rain. Most people would see chaos, but Sarah saw patterns. She saw languages. She saw the voices of alien worlds speaking across the galaxy. The Deep Space Monitoring Station sat hidden beneath a mountain in Colorado. To the outside world, it was a research facility studying cosmic radiation. In reality, it was humanity's secret window into galactic civilization. For 63 years, humans had been listening to alien conversations without saying a single word back. Dr. Chen, "We're getting another council broadcast," called out Lieutenant James Park from his station. His fingers danced across the keyboard as he fine-tuned the signal. Same frequency as always. Crystal clear. Sarah walked over to his workstation. The young officer had been with the project for 3 years now. He still got excited about intercepting alien transmissions. Sarah remembered when she used to feel that same thrill. Now, after 20 years of listening to the Galactic Council, she mostly felt tired. "Put it through the main speakers," she said. "Let everyone hear this one." The room filled with a sound like wind chimes mixed with electronic music. To untrained ears, it would sound like noise. But Sarah and her team had spent decades learning to understand these sounds. They were words. Alien words that carried meaning across the stars. The translation software kicked in, converting the alien speech into English text that appeared on the screens. Sarah read along as the alien voice spoke about trade routes and mining rights, standard council business. Then the tone changed. "The biological survey of Sector 7 Alpha continues," the voice said. Sarah recognized it as Speaker Vextar, one of the council's most important leaders. "The primitive carbon-based life forms on the 4th planet show no signs of advancement beyond basic agriculture. Recommendation: continue monitoring for another solar cycle, then proceed with resource extraction protocols." Sarah's jaw tightened. She knew what resource extraction meant. The council had done it 17 times before. They would arrive at a world, declare the inhabitants too primitive to matter, and strip away everything valuable. Sometimes they moved the native populations to reservation worlds. Sometimes they didn't bother. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Park said quietly, "that 4th planet they're talking about, I've been tracking the coordinates. It's Kepler 442b. Sarah nodded grimly. She knew about Kepler 442b. Human telescopes had been watching that world for years. It was home to a peaceful species that looked somewhat like large rabbits. They had built beautiful cities powered by solar energy. They created art that could be seen from orbit. They took care of their sick and elderly. By any reasonable measure, they were civilized, but not by council standards. The broadcast continued. Speaker Vextar's voice carried the casual arrogance that Sarah had learned to hate over the years. "These creatures have failed to develop fusion technology or establish off-world colonies. They waste time on emotional bonding rituals and artistic expression. Clearly, they lack the mental capacity for true advancement. The council's time would be better spent on more promising species." Around the control room, Sarah's team exchanged dark looks. They had heard this speech before about other worlds. The council had 12 member species, and they all shared the same basic belief. If you didn't develop technology exactly the way they had, you were inferior. If you valued things like art or family relationships over military might, you were weak. If you chose cooperation over conquest, you were failing to reach your potential. Humans had been lucky. When they first detected council transmissions in 1962, world leaders made a smart choice. Instead of trying to make contact, they decided to watch and learn. They built listening stations in secret. They studied alien languages. They learned about galactic politics and technology. And the more they learned, the more grateful they became for staying hidden. "Dr. Chen," called out Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the linguistics station, "I'm picking up something else in this transmission." Background chatter between council ships. Sarah walked over to Tanaka's station. The older Japanese woman had an ear for alien languages that bordered on supernatural. If anyone could pull extra meaning from a council broadcast, it was her. "What are they saying?" Sarah asked. Tanaka adjusted her headphones and frowned at her screens. "It's casual conversation between patrol ship crews. They're talking about—" She paused, her face growing pale. "They're talking about Earth." The room went silent except for the humming of computers. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. "What about Earth?" "They know we exist," Tanaka said quietly. They've known for years. Listen to this. She played back a section of the transmission, with the translation appearing on her screen in real time. The blue world in Sector 12 Gamma continues its amusing little charade, one alien voice said, with what sounded like laughter. They think they're hidden, but we've been watching them build their primitive space weapons for decades. Another voice joined in. Carbon-based species are so predictable. They always think they're clever. These humans actually believe they invented stealth technology. Should we add them to the harvest list? The first voice asked. Eventually. Let them play with their toys a while longer. It's entertaining to watch them scurry around their little blue rock, building weapons they would never dare use against their superiors. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. The council knew about humanity. They had always known. They were watching Earth like humans might watch an ant farm, waiting to decide if the ants were worth keeping around. Lieutenant Park looked up from his station with wide eyes. Dr. Chen, I need to call this in, right? This changes everything, Sarah nodded slowly. Get me a secure line to Admiral Torres at Spacecom. Priority Alpha. While Park worked to establish the encrypted connection, Sarah stared at the alien text still flowing across her screens. For 63 years, humans had been careful. They had stayed quiet. They had built their technology in secret, always wondering if they were advanced enough to survive contact with galactic civilization. Now she knew the truth. The Council didn't care how advanced Earth was. They had already decided that humans were inferior, not because of any actual evaluation, but because humans hadn't conquered other worlds, because they spent resources on art and music instead of bigger weapons, because they formed emotional bonds instead of pure logical alliances. The secure connection crackled to life. Dr. Chen, this is Admiral Torres. What's the situation? Sarah took a deep breath. Admiral, we have a problem. The Council knows about us. They've always known, and they don't consider us worthy of membership. There was a long pause before Torres responded. How long do we have? Unknown. They're treating us like entertainment right now. But that could change at any time. Another pause. Doctor, in your professional opinion, how would the Council react if we revealed ourselves? If we made official first contact? Sarah looked around the room at her team. These people had spent their careers learning about alien cultures. They had studied every Council species, memorized their customs, analyzed their psychology. They knew these aliens better than the aliens knew themselves. Admiral, Sarah said slowly, I don't think they would take us seriously. No matter what we said or did, they would see us as primitives playing at being civilized. Then maybe it's time we showed them exactly what kind of primitives we are, Torres said. The line went dead. Sarah stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Around her, the alien voices continued their casual conversation about inferior species and resource extraction. They talked about Earth like it was already conquered, just waiting for the paperwork to be filed. But they had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that staying quiet meant staying weak. They thought that because humans valued things like compassion and art, they couldn't also be dangerous when threatened. Soon, Sarah thought, they would learn the difference between choosing peace and being unable to fight. The Council was about to discover that Earth had stayed quiet for a very good reason. Admiral Rebecca Torres stood in the command center of the United Earth Space Command, watching the live feed from the monitoring station in Colorado. The massive underground facility buzzed with activity as officers moved between workstations, their faces grim. She had been waiting for this day for 30 years. Ever since she first learned about the secret program to monitor alien communications. Torres was 72 years old, a veteran of 3 different military branches before Spacecom even existed. She had gray hair and scars from conflicts that the public never knew about. When other nations tested humanity's resolve, Torres had been there to remind them why that was a bad idea. Now she faced a threat that made human wars look like playground fights. Admiral, we're receiving another transmission, announced Commander Sarah Kim from the communication station. This one's different. It's being broadcast on all Council frequencies simultaneously. Torres nodded grimly. Put it on the main screen. The central display flickered to life, showing the translation of an alien broadcast. The words appeared in real time as the alien voice spoke across the galaxy. Torres recognized the pattern from the briefings she had received. This was an official Council announcement, the kind they made when declaring new policies or making important decisions. Speaker Vextar's distinctive voice filled the command center. Even through the translation software, his tone carried unmistakable arrogance. Citizens of the Galactic Council, we address you today regarding the ongoing management of primitive species within our sphere of influence. Torres crossed her arms and waited. She had a feeling she wasn't going to like what came next. Our recent biological surveys have identified several species that continue to waste valuable resources through inefficient social structures and technological development. Vextar continued, these inferior biologicals persist in allocating resources to emotional bonding rituals, artistic expression, and care for non-productive individuals. Such behavior demonstrates a fundamental lack of evolutionary progress. Around the command center, officers exchanged glances. They all knew the Council's philosophy by now. If you didn't think like them, you were automatically inferior. Of particular note, Vextar's voice took on what sounded like amusement, is the species inhabiting the third planet of the Sol system. These humans have been observed for several cycles, and their behavior patterns are remarkably consistent with other failed evolutionary experiments. Torres felt her jaw clench. Several officers turned to look at her, but she kept her eyes on the screen. These creatures have developed what they consider advanced technology, Vextar said, and now there was definitely laughter in his voice. They have built weapons of mass destruction, yet lack the wisdom to use them for proper expansion. They have achieved primitive spaceflight, yet waste time sending messages of peace to empty space. Most amusing of all, they have developed surveillance technology that they believe keeps them hidden from their superiors. The laughter grew louder. Other council members were joining in now, their alien voices creating a chorus of mockery that echoed through the command center. These humans scurry about their little blue rock, building weapons they could never dare use against species that have mastered the galaxy for millennia. Vextar continued. They practice primitive electromagnetic communication, believing themselves clever, while we monitor every transmission they send. They form emotional attachments to individuals who provide no tactical advantage. They waste medical resources on treating genetic defects instead of eliminating them. Truly, they represent everything that is wrong with unguided biological development. Torres could feel her blood pressure rising. Around the command center, she could see her officers struggling to maintain their composure. These people had dedicated their lives to defending Earth. They had trained for years to operate in secret, always knowing that humanity was outgunned and outnumbered. But they had never expected to be laughed at like children playing war games. However, Vextar said, his tone becoming more businesslike, the Council recognizes that even failed species may have some minimal value. Therefore, we hereby designate the Sol system as a biological preserve, with the third planet classified as a specimen collection zone. Torres felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. The human species will be maintained at current population levels for scientific study, Vextar announced. Periodic harvesting of specimens will be conducted to better understand the psychological patterns of species that choose cooperation over conquest. The humans' emotional bonding rituals will be particularly useful for psychological research on other primitive species. The alien laughter returned, louder than before. Perhaps we can even train some of them to perform for the entertainment of civilized species. Their capacity for what they call art might prove amusing during diplomatic functions. Torres had heard enough. She turned to Commander Kim. Cut the transmission. Ma'am, the broadcast is still ongoing. I said cut it. Torres's voice was deadly quiet. The screen went dark. The command center fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant sound of air circulation systems. Every officer in the room was looking at Torres now, waiting for orders. Torres stood perfectly still for a long moment, her mind racing through everything she had just heard. The Council didn't just consider humanity inferior. They considered humans to be test subjects, laboratory animals, entertainment for bored aliens at dinner parties. She thought about her granddaughter, who wanted to be an astronaut when she grew up. She thought about the millions of people on Earth who had no idea that alien civilizations existed, let alone that those aliens saw them as specimens to be harvested. She thought about the artists and musicians and teachers who made life worth living, and how the Council saw them as evidence of humanity's failure to evolve properly. Admiral, Commander Kim said quietly, what are your orders? Torres turned to face her staff. These were the best officers humanity had to offer. They were smart, dedicated, and absolutely loyal to their planet and their species. For decades, they had operated in the shadows, building Earth's defenses and preparing for the day when contact with alien civilizations became inevitable. That day had arrived. Commander Kim, get me an encrypted line to all department heads. Priority 1. Torres's voice was steady, but everyone in the room could hear the steel beneath it. Commander Martinez, I want a full inventory of our fleet assets within the hour. Commander Singh, pull up the files on Council military capabilities. Commander Jackson, contact Dr. Chen and tell her I need her best xenolinguistics team ready for immediate deployment. The officers jumped into action, their training taking over. Torres watched them work for a moment, feeling a surge of pride. These humans that the Council mocked so casually had built something remarkable. They had created a space force that operated in absolute secrecy. They had developed technology that even the advanced alien civilizations didn't fully understand. And they had done it all while maintaining the values that the Council saw as weaknesses. The secure communication system chimed to life. One by one, the heads of Earth's most classified programs appeared on the screen. General Harrison from the Planetary Defense Division, Dr. Elizabeth Warren from Advanced Technologies, Director Michael Chang from Deep Space Operations, Admiral Patricia Novak from the Fleet Command. Ladies and gentlemen, Torres said, looking each of them in the eye through the video link, you've all heard the Council's latest broadcast by now. They've made their intentions clear. Earth is no longer just being observed. We've been classified as a specimen collection zone. The faces on the screen showed a mixture of anger and determination. These were people who had spent their careers preparing for this moment, hoping it would never come, but knowing that it eventually would. I'm not going to ask for your opinions on what the Council said, Torres continued. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do about it. For 63 years, Earth has stayed quiet. We've watched and learned and prepared. The Council thinks that makes us weak. They think that because we choose cooperation over conquest, we're incapable of defending ourselves. Torres smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. They're about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being unable to fight. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to introduce ourselves to the Galactic Council, and we're going to make sure they never underestimate humanity again. The faces on the screen nodded grimly. Around the command center, officers worked with renewed purpose. Outside the hidden facility, the people of Earth went about their daily lives, unaware that their planet's long silence was about to end. The Council had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that staying quiet meant staying weak. They were about to discover that humans had been quiet for a very good reason, and that reason was about to pay them a visit. Captain Marcus Webb floated in the command chair of the UES Defiance, watching the alien patrol ship on his main screen. The vessel looked like a massive insect made of metal and crystal, its hull covered in spines and sensor arrays. According to the intelligence files, it belonged to the Korthak, one of the Council's warrior species. They were proud of their military traditions and considered themselves the finest fighters in the galaxy. Webb was about to test that theory. Captain, we're at the edge of their sensor range, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Walsh from the navigation station. The stealth systems are holding steady. They have no idea we're here. Webb nodded. The Defiance was humanity's most advanced warship, built in secret over 15 years using technology that the Council claimed humans were too primitive to develop. The ship was completely invisible to alien sensors. Armed with weapons based on Council designs but improved by human engineering, and crewed by the best officers Earth had to offer, it was also about to become the first human vessel to make official contact with alien life. Communications. Open a channel to the Korthak ship, Webb ordered. Standard diplomatic frequency. Channel open. Sir, replied Ensign Jennifer Park. They're definitely going to detect this transmission. That's the point. Webb straightened in his chair and cleared his throat. Korthak vessel, this is Captain Marcus Webb of the United Earth ship Defiance. We've been listening to your Council's broadcasts. We need to talk. The response was immediate. Alarms began blaring from the alien ship, as its energy signatures spiked across every spectrum. On the main screen, Webb could see weapons ports opening along the insect-like hull. Sir, they're charging weapons, Walsh reported. Multiple plasma cannons and what looks like some kind of particle beam array. Defensive systems online, Webb said calmly. But hold fire. Let's see what they have to say first. The communications console crackled to life with an alien voice speaking in rapid, clicking syllables. The universal translator kicked in, converting the sounds into English text on Webb's screen. "Unknown vessel, you will identify yourself immediately or be destroyed," the alien captain said. "No unregistered ships are permitted in council space. Your presence here is a violation of galactic law." Webb smiled grimly. "Anson Park, respond on the same frequency. Make sure our translator converts my words into perfect Korthak dialects." "Ready, sir." "Korthak Captain, my name is Marcus Webb. I represent the United Earth Space Command. We are the species you've been calling primitives and specimens in your recent broadcasts. We've decided it's time to correct some misconceptions." The alien response was a mixture of confusion and anger. "Impossible. The biological survey data clearly shows that humans lack the technology for interstellar travel. You must be some kind of council test or training exercise." "I assure you, Captain, this is no exercise." Webb gestured to Walsh. "Bring us to full visibility. Let them get a good look at us." The Defiance's stealth systems powered down, and suddenly the human ship appeared on every sensor array within 1,000,000 kilometers. Webb watched the alien vessel's energy signatures spike even higher as its crew struggled to understand what they were seeing. "That stealth technology is impossible," the Korthak captain said, his voice rising in pitch. "Our sensors detect no quantum displacement, no temporal distortion, no gravitic masking." "How were you hidden?" "Human engineering," Webb replied. "We've had 63 years to study council technology and improve on it. Would you like a demonstration of our other capabilities?" The alien ship's weapon swiveled to target the Defiance. "You will surrender immediately for interrogation. Any resistance will result in your destruction." Webb sighed. He had hoped to handle this diplomatically, but the Council's arrogance seemed to be programmed into their member species. "Tactical, prepare to disable their weapons systems. Non-lethal force only. We want to talk to them, not start a war." "Targeting their plasma cannon arrays," reported Lieutenant David Chen from the weapons station. "Disruptor beams ready. Fire." The Defiance's weapons were invisible to alien sensors based on principles that the Council had never discovered. Twin beams of energy reached out across space, striking the Korthak ship's weapon systems with surgical precision. The alien plasma cannons went dark one by one, their power systems overloaded but not destroyed. "What? How did you—" The alien captain's voice was filled with panic now. "Our weapons are offline, but I detect no incoming fire. This is impossible." "Captain, I'm reading massive power fluctuations throughout their ship," Chen reported. "Their defensive systems are trying to compensate for technology they don't understand." Webb activated the external cameras and broadcast the feed to the Korthak ship. The alien crew would now be able to see him sitting in his command chair, a human in a simple blue uniform with silver insignia. "Korthak Captain, please listen carefully," Webb said. "I don't want to harm you or your crew. I want to deliver a message to your council. But first, you need to understand that everything you've been told about humanity is wrong. You're actually human," the alien captain said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But the intelligence reports, the biological surveys, you're supposed to be primitives." "We've been letting you think that," Webb replied. "For over 60 years we've watched and listened and learned. We know about your council, your member species, your technology, your politics. We know about the 17 worlds you've conquered and the species you've displaced. We know about your plans for Earth." There was a long silence from the alien ship. When the captain spoke again, his voice was different, uncertain. "If you're so advanced, why didn't you contact the council years ago?" "Why remain hidden?" Webb considered his answer carefully. This moment would determine whether first contact led to peace or war. "Because we wanted to understand what kind of civilizations we were dealing with. We wanted to know if the galaxy was ruled by diplomats or conquerors. We found our answer in your broadcasts. The Council maintains peace throughout the galaxy," the Korthak captain said, but he didn't sound as confident as before. "The Council conquers worlds that think differently than they do," Webb corrected. "They destroy cultures that value art over weapons. They eliminate species that choose cooperation over domination. Tell me, Captain, what happened to the ethereals of Vega Prime?" Another long silence. The ethereals had been a peaceful species that specialized in music and poetry. The Council had declared them evolutionarily stagnant and relocated them to a barren moon where they died out within a generation. That was... That was different, the alien captain said weakly. No, it wasn't, Webb replied. It was exactly the same as what your council plans for Earth, except for one thing they didn't consider. What's that? Webb's expression hardened. Humans don't relocate easily, he gestured to Chen. Show them our fleet. Across the Proxima Centauri system, dozens of human ships decloaked simultaneously. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers, and support vessels appeared on sensors like stars being born. Each ship was armed with weapons that surpassed Council technology, crewed by officers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. The Korthak captain's voice was barely a whisper now. How many ships do you have? Enough, Webb said simply. Captain, I'm going to make you an offer. You can take a message to your council, or you can attempt to fight your way out of this system. I strongly recommend the first option. What message? Webb stood up from his command chair and walked to the center of the bridge, making sure the alien cameras could see him clearly. Behind him, his officers worked at their stations with calm efficiency. The bridge was quiet, professional, and absolutely deadly. Tell your council that Earth formally rejects their classification of humanity as a primitive species, Webb said. Tell them we reject their authority over our world and their plans to harvest our people for specimens. Tell them that we've been studying their technology, their tactics, and their weaknesses for 63 years. He paused, letting that sink in, and tell them that if they want to test their theories about human inferiority, they're welcome to try, but they should know that we're not the same species that was building stone tools when they first achieved spaceflight. We've learned from watching them. We've grown stronger by staying hidden, and we've had 6 decades to prepare for this conversation. The Korthak captain was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a new kind of respect. Captain Webb, may I ask you a personal question? Go ahead. Why are you letting us live? By council standards, we are your enemies. We came here to enforce their will. Webb smiled, and for the first time it was a genuinely warm expression. Because that's not how humans do things, Captain. We believe that understanding is more valuable than conquest. We think that diversity makes civilization stronger, not weaker. We choose to solve problems through communication rather than elimination. He paused. But make no mistake, choosing diplomacy doesn't mean we're incapable of fighting. It means we prefer not to unless we have no other choice. I understand, the alien captain said quietly. Captain Webb, I will deliver your message to the council. But I must warn you, they will not take this well. They do not handle challenges to their authority gracefully. We're counting on it, Webb replied. We want them to understand exactly what they're dealing with. The council chamber was the most sacred space in galactic civilization. Built from crystallized starlight and quantum-forged metals, it floated in the center of Nexus Station like a jewel against the backdrop of space. For 3,000 years, only the 12-member species of the Galactic Council had been permitted to enter its halls. Today, that was about to change. Speaker Vextar stood at the center podium, his crystalline form pulsing with agitated colors. Around him, the representatives of the Council's member species sat in their designated areas, each section designed for their particular biology. The insectoid Korthak clustered in their hive-like alcoves. The aquatic Nereids floated in their pressure tanks. The energy beings called the Lumari flickered in their containment fields. All of them were staring at the human, walking calmly through their sacred chamber. Captain Marcus Webb wore his dress uniform, the dark blue fabric crisp and formal. His boots clicked against the crystalline floor as he approached the central podium. Behind him walked 2 of his officers, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Walsh and Chief Medical Officer Dr. Amanda Rivera. They moved with military precision, showing neither fear nor submission as they entered the heart of galactic power. The Korthak captain who had brought them here, Commander Zektar, followed at a respectful distance. He had been quiet during the journey to Nexus Station, but Webb had noticed him watching the human crew with growing interest. It was one thing to hear about human capabilities. It was another to see them in action for 3 days straight. This is outrageous. Speaker Vextar's voice rang through the chamber, the translation systems converting his crystalline chimes into words the humans could understand. No unrecognized species has ever entered these halls. Security should have... Security tried. Commander Zektar interrupted, his mandibles clicking nervously. Honored speaker, perhaps you should listen to what these humans have to say before making any judgments. Vextar's form flared brighter with indignation. Are you suggesting that we, the rulers of galactic civilization, should negotiate with primitives? These creatures haven't even achieved proper space colonization. Webb reached the center podium and stopped. He looked around the chamber slowly, taking in each species, each representative, each alien face staring at him with mixtures of curiosity and contempt. When he spoke, his voice was calm and carried clearly through the vast space. "Honored representatives," he began, "my name is Captain Marcus Webb of the United Earth Space Command. I come here as a representative of humanity, carrying a formal response to your recent broadcasts about my species. You dare to speak in this chamber?" Vextar's crystalline body rang like struck chimes. "Guards, remove this creature immediately." "I wouldn't recommend that," Webb said mildly. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device that looked like a standard tablet computer. When he activated it, holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber, showing detailed intelligence reports on every species present. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Korthak military formations on their border worlds, the Nereid trade routes through supposedly secret hyperspace lanes, the Lumari energy manipulation techniques that they considered state secrets, the internal political struggles of species that hadn't shared that information with anyone. "For 63 years, Webb said as the holograms continued to display impossibly detailed intelligence, humanity has been studying the Galactic Council. We know your military capabilities, your economic systems, your political structures, and your individual weaknesses. We know about your private communications, your secret alliances, and your personal fears." The chamber had gone completely silent. Representatives from different species were staring at the intelligence displays showing their most classified information. "This is impossible," whispered Counselor Morden of the aquatic Nereids. "Some of this data is from sealed governmental archives. How could primitives access our internal communications?" Webb smiled. "The same way we've been accessing your public broadcasts for over 6 decades. You see, when you dismiss a species as primitive, you stop watching for signs that they might be learning from you." He gestured, and the holographic displays changed. Now they showed human technology, ships, weapons, medical systems, and defensive installations that clearly surpassed anything the Council had developed. "While you were laughing about our primitive electromagnetic communications, we were intercepting every transmission you sent," Webb continued. "While you mocked our emotional bonding rituals, we were building a space fleet designed specifically to counter your tactics. While you planned to harvest us as specimens, we were preparing to defend ourselves." Vextar's crystalline form had dimmed considerably. "Even if your technology is more advanced than our surveys indicated, you're still just one world. The Council commands 12 species across hundreds of worlds. You cannot threaten us." "We're not here to threaten anyone," Webb replied. "We're here to correct some dangerous misconceptions before they lead to unnecessary conflict." He activated another display, this one showing Council military doctrine and historical records. "Your expansion strategy has worked for 3,000 years because you only encountered species that developed along similar paths. Aggressive, conquest-oriented, technology-focused civilizations that you could understand and predict." The display showed the 17 worlds the Council had conquered, each following the same pattern. Initial contact, demands for submission, brief resistance, overwhelming force, conquest. "But humanity developed differently," Webb said. "We chose cooperation over conquest. We valued art and culture alongside military technology. We built diverse societies instead of rigid hierarchies. You see these as weaknesses because they don't match your model of advancement." "They are weaknesses," Vextar snapped. "Emotional attachment makes you vulnerable. Artistic expression wastes resources. Cooperation with inferior individuals reduces efficiency." Dr. Rivera stepped forward. Webb had briefed her carefully for this moment. She was Earth's leading expert on xenobiology, and had spent years studying Council species through their broadcasts. "Speaker Vextar," she said respectfully, "may I ask you about the Crimson Plague that's been affecting the Lumari energy fields for the past 50 years? The energy beings in their containment fields flickered with what might have been surprise. The Crimson Plague was their most closely guarded secret, a disease that was slowly killing their entire species. That is not a topic for public discussion," Vextar said coldly. "Of course not," Rivera agreed. "But human medical science has found a cure." The chamber erupted in alien voices, all speaking at once. The Lumari representatives flared brighter. their energy patterns shifting to what Webb's briefings had told him indicated extreme agitation. "Impossible," Vextar said. "Our finest scientists have worked on that problem for decades. How could primitives, because we approach medicine differently?" Rivera interrupted gently. "Council Medical Science focuses on technological solutions, genetic manipulation, cybernetic enhancement, technological replacements for biological functions. Human medicine focuses on understanding biological systems as integrated wholes." She activated her own display, showing medical scans and treatment, protocols that would mean nothing to most humans, but clearly impressed the alien scientists in the chamber. "The Crimson Plague isn't a disease in the traditional sense," Rivera explained. "It's an evolutionary adaptation gone wrong. The Lumari energy matrix is trying to evolve beyond its current form, but it lacks the biological diversity to complete the process safely. Human genetic therapy can provide the missing components." The lead Lumari representative, a being called Flux Andra, spoke for the first time since Webb had entered the chamber. "You would share this cure freely?" "We would," Rivera said simply, "because that's what civilized species do for each other." Webb stepped forward again. "That's just one example. Human agricultural techniques can solve the food crisis on Corvanus Prime. Our diplomatic protocols can resolve the territorial dispute between the Korthak, the Valdari, and the Centurions that's been draining Council resources for 2 centuries. He paused, letting that sink in. "But you'll never benefit from human innovations if you insist on treating us as specimens to be harvested. You'll never learn from our different approaches if you classify us as failures for choosing cooperation over conquest." Vextar was quiet for a long moment, his crystalline form dim and still. When he spoke, his voice had lost much of its arrogance. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Recognition," Webb said simply. "Not membership in your council. We're not interested in ruling over other species, but recognition as an independent civilization with the right to exist without interference. And if we refuse?" Webb's expression didn't change, but something cold entered his voice. "Then you'll discover exactly how effective human military technology can be. We've spent 63 years studying your tactics and weaknesses. We know how to disable your ships without destroying them. We know how to neutralize your weapons without killing your crews. And we know how to protect every world in this galaxy that you've marked for conquest." He gestured to Walsh, who activated a final display. This one showed Human D. 3 months after Captain Webb's historic speech in the council chamber, the galaxy was a very different place. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her new office aboard Harmony Station, the first joint human-alien research facility ever built. Through the massive windows, she could see ships from dozens of different species docked at the station's ports. Human vessels worked alongside Korthak fighters and Nereid science ships, their crews learning from each other in ways that had been impossible just a few months ago. The changes had started almost immediately after Webb's presentation to the Council. The vote to recognize humanity as an independent civilization had been closer than anyone expected. 7 species in favor, 4 against, with 1 abstention. But it had been enough to change everything. Chen turned from the window as her assistant, a young Korthak named Clicktar, entered the office carrying a datapad. The insectoid alien had volunteered to work with the human xenolinguistics team. "Eager to learn about human communication methods, Dr. Chen," Clicktar said, his mandibles clicking in the pattern that humans had learned indicated excitement. "We've received the final translation of the Valdari historical archives. The territorial dispute data is complete." Chen smiled as she took the datapad. The Valdari were one of the 3 species locked in the 2-century territorial conflict that had been draining Council resources. Their language was incredibly complex, with 17 different tenses and meaning that changed based on the speaker's emotional state. Council translators had been struggling with it for decades. Human linguists had cracked it in 6 weeks. "Excellent work," Chen said. "Have you sent copies to Admiral Torres and the mediation team?" "Already done," Clicktar replied. "Dr. Chen, may I ask you something?" "Of course." The young alien hesitated. "Why do humans spend so much time learning other species' languages? The Council has universal translators. Why do you want to understand the original words?" Chen set down the datapad and considered her answer. It was a question she'd been asked many times over the past few months, by aliens who couldn't understand why humans insisted on learning their actual languages instead of just using translation software. Because translation software can only convey facts. she said finally. It can't convey meaning. When you speak to me in Korthak, you're not just giving me information, you're sharing part of your culture, your way of thinking, your people's history. The universal translators miss all of that. Kliktar's compound eyes glittered with what Chen had learned was the Korthak equivalent of surprise. I never thought about it that way. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Chen activated her console and Admiral Torres appeared on the screen, calling from the bridge of the UES Harmony. The massive ship served as the mobile headquarters for Earth's new diplomatic corps. Dr. Chen, we've just received word from the mediation talks on Corvanus Prime, Torres said. The Valdari, Korthak, and Centurions have reached a preliminary agreement on the territorial boundaries. Chen felt a surge of satisfaction. The three-way territorial dispute had been considered unsolvable by council mediators. Human diplomats had approached it differently, focusing on understanding each species' actual needs rather than their stated demands. It turned out that all three species wanted the same thing, security for their colonies, but they had different definitions of what security meant. That's wonderful news, Chen said. What about the Lumari medical treatment program? Dr. Rivera reports that the first phase trials are showing remarkable results, Torres replied. The Crimson Plague symptoms are reducing by an average of 60% across all test subjects. Fluxandra says it's the first real progress they've seen in 50 years. Chen nodded. The medical cooperation program had been one of the first initiatives launched after the Terran Accords were signed. Human doctors working with alien scientists were making breakthroughs that neither species could have achieved alone. Admiral, any word from Speaker Vextar about the formal signing ceremony? Torres's expression grew slightly more serious. That's actually why I'm calling. Vextar has requested a private meeting with you and Captain Webb before the ceremony. He wouldn't say what it's about, but he seemed different. Chen raised an eyebrow. Different how? Humble, Torres said, and Chen could hear the surprise in her voice. I've never seen a council speaker act humble before. An hour later, Chen found herself in the same chamber where Webb had made his historic speech to the council. This time only Speaker Vextar was present, his crystalline form subdued and dim. Webb stood beside her, still wearing his dress uniform but looking more relaxed than he had during that first tense encounter. Captain Webb. Dr. Chen, Vextar said, his chiming voice quieter than usual. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me privately. Of course, Speaker, Webb replied. What can we do for you? Vextar was silent for a long moment, his crystalline structure shifting through subtle color changes. Chen had learned enough about his species to recognize the patterns of deep thought and internal conflict. I wanted to apologize, Vextar said finally. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. In 3,000 years of galactic history, no council speaker had ever apologized to a non-member species. Speaker, Chen said gently, for what I said about your species, for what we plan to do to your world. Vextar's form brightened slightly. We were wrong. Not just about your technological capabilities, but about everything we thought we understood about civilization itself. Webb stepped forward. Speaker, you don't need to— Yes, I do, Vextar interrupted. The Council has ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia, by assuming that our way was the only path to advancement. We believed that any species that didn't follow our model was inherently inferior. We were arrogant, and that arrogance nearly led us to destroy something precious. He gestured around the chamber. This room has been a symbol of our superiority for thousands of years. Only the most advanced species were permitted to enter. But in 3 months of working with humans, we've learned more about effective civilization than we discovered in the previous 3 centuries. Chen felt a warmth spreading through her chest. What do you mean? Your diplomatic solutions to problems we considered unsolvable. Your medical approaches that heal where our technology could only treat symptoms. Your ability to understand and work with species that we had written off as hopeless. Vextar's form pulsed with what Chen now recognized as admiration. You've shown us that diversity of thought isn't a weakness to be eliminated. It's a strength to be cultivated. Webb crossed his arms. And the 4 species that voted against recognizing humanity are asking to join the cooperation programs, Vextar admitted. The hegemony's crystalline engineering is centuries behind human metallurgy techniques. The Valdari want to learn human agricultural methods. Even the Centurions are interested in your military strategies, not for conquest, but for defense. He paused, his form shifting through complex color patterns. Captain Webb, When you stood in this chamber 3 months ago, you said that humanity chooses cooperation over conquest. At the time, I thought that made you weak. Now I understand that it makes you powerful in ways we never imagined. How so? Webb asked. Because cooperation builds alliances, while conquest creates enemies. Because diversity of thought leads to innovation, while uniformity leads to stagnation. Because understanding different perspectives makes you stronger, while dismissing them makes you blind to possibilities. Vextar moved closer to the two humans, his crystalline form now glowing with warm, steady light. The Council spent 3,000 years ruling through fear and superiority. In 3 months, humanity has built more genuine alliances than we achieved in all that time. You've solved problems that we couldn't, healed diseases that we couldn't cure, and created cooperation where we could only impose order. Chen felt tears starting in her eyes. Speaker, what are you saying? I'm saying that the galaxy needs teachers, not rulers, and humanity has proven to be the finest teachers any of us have ever encountered. Vextar's voice carried a note of wonder. You've shown us that true civilization isn't about having the most powerful weapons or the most advanced technology. It's about how you treat others, especially those who are different from you. The ceremony later that day was unlike anything in galactic history. Representatives from all 12 council species stood alongside human diplomats as the Terran Accords were formally signed. The document didn't just recognize humanity's independence. It established new principles for interspecies relations based on cooperation, mutual respect, and cultural exchange. 6 months later, Chen stood in her classroom aboard Harmony Station, teaching a mixed group of human and alien students about comparative linguistics. Kliktar sat in the front row, taking careful notes as Chen explained how different species' languages reflected their unique ways of understanding the universe. Through the classroom windows, she could see ships from 20 different species docked at the station. The fleet that Admiral Torres now commanded included vessels from across the galaxy, all working together to explore new worlds, establish first contact with newly discovered species, and resolve conflicts through diplomacy rather than force. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.